So, thank you. Great. Thanks, everybody. We will get started. Hopefully, everybody can see my screen. We're going to go ahead and welcome everyone. Want to acknowledge some of our board members. Some of the co-hosts tonight are Lori Veninger from the 9th Congressional District on the board, Karen Noti Valley from the 1st Congressional District, Patricia O'Connor from the 2nd Congressional District. Also, we've got some of our other board members, Rachel Horak from the 8th Congressional District. Am I missing anybody? Is Parmalee here yet, or Debbie? No. Okay, and I know Jean is not. She's out there knocking on doors.
Parmalee is joining now.
Parmalee is joining now. Okay, great. Thank you. She on? Please introduce yourselves on the chat, in the chat. Let's see if I can get my slides to work. There we go. All right, we will get started. I'm Debbie Paul. Welcome, everybody. I am the 5th Congressional District and chairperson of Indivisible Mass Coalition. Quickly, we're going to go through our meeting norms. We assume all on this call come with good intentions. As we've been saying, please introduce yourselves in the chat, your name, the group you're with, if you have one, and then the town you're from. All attendees, please expect to be on mute. Only the speakers will be unmuted. To ask questions, we're going to hold all questions until the very end because we have a lot of speakers. So if you have a question, just type chat in the box, the person you want to address it to, and your question. That way we can find it quickly towards the end. Any resource that we share in the chat, you can click on the link. It'll open up in a separate tab, and also we'll send up a follow-up email with the links. Once again, there we go. Okay, so we begin with our land acknowledgement shared with us by Joan Lester, who is part of the Indivisible Mass Coalition Racial Justice and Equity team. Wherever you go in America, you are on Indigenous land. Tonight we acknowledge that those of us who live in Massachusetts are now on the lands of the Mashpee Wampanoag Nation, the Wampanoag tribe of Gay-Hitaquina, Massachusetts, the Nipmuc Nation, and the native residents of Herring Pond. We recognize their legacy, their ongoing strength, resilience, and their continuing presence. Quickly, tonight's call, we focus on primaries in Massachusetts. I know a lot of us have been working on outside races, and thank you everybody for doing that, but we really have to take care of our own backyard. So we need to take a short break because the primaries in some cases are the race, because the election in November, once you win the primary, will be much easier than the primary. We have a presentation about Neighbor to Neighbor from Indivisible National. We have 3 Governor's Council candidates speaking with us, Paul DiPaolo, Mara Dolan, and Jeff Morneau. Then I'll quickly introduce why we're endorsing the Secretary of State, and then we'll go into a Q&A. So thank you for that. Next, let me get technical issues. Quick reminder for anybody who's just joined, please introduce yourselves in your chat, your name, your group, your town, and ask a question in the chat. We're going to hold all questions till the end. Okay, next I turn it over to Karen Noti Valley, who is our CD1 representative on the Indivisible Mass Coalition Board. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. Again, I'm Karen Noti Valley. I represent CD1, and I'm here to speak briefly about the Mass State primary, what's new, and the key dates. Probably everyone's quite familiar with a lot of this information, but there are some new pieces and some dates that are coming up fast. So the primary is September 6th. And the polling hours are from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The last day to register to vote is on Saturday, August 27th. Early voting starts on the same day, August 27th, and runs through Friday, September 2nd. There are different polling locations for early voting than there are for election day. So that's something to be aware of. And vote by mail applications must reach your local election official by 5 p.m. on Monday, August 29th to meet that particular deadline. Voter registration under the new rules has been reduced to 10 days prior to election day as opposed to the 20 days that it has been in the past. However, don't wait. If you know anyone that needs to be registered, have them register to vote online now. There is this one sort of quirky day because of the new 10-day rule and voting starting on Saturday, August 27th, which is also 10 days out from the primary election, that there is this one day where someone would conceivably be able to register to vote in person and cast a provisional ballot during that first day of early voting. There's additional new information. There's additional new information about early voting in terms of the applying the 150-foot no campaigning rule that has already been in existence for polling places on election day. The state has now extended that to cover polling places for early voting. So for this call, obviously there's many activists and activist groups that you're in charge of. So we would just want everyone to be cognizant that you need to stand that 150 feet away if you're doing any early voting standouts with campaign signs for your candidates that you're working for. Also call your local election official for early voting poll hours and locations, because as mentioned earlier, those can differ from your September 6th election day polling location and the set hours. Also, all the voting information, we included the link for the Massachusetts Secretary of State's election division resource. Again, probably most of us on this call already use that. It's a very user-friendly link, and it has individual buttons from everything from mail-in voting to early voting to registering, changing, updating your voter registration, things like that. So I find that to be a very useful resource that you can also cut and paste easily the link and send that out to your different groups that may be out trying to register people to vote, or provide them these particular dates and new information. So basically, those are the key dates and new information. So I'll turn that back over to you, Deb.
Deb, unmute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So next we shift over to information from Indivisible National, and I'm very happy that we have Andy Zach and Juliana Terry Torgerson with us this evening from Digital Data Management and Analysis, and they are here to explain to all of us about the new Neighbor to Neighbor Get Out the Vote program from National, and Massachusetts has been selected to help pilot the program during our primary season. Juliana?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen really quick.
Okay, great.
Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Juliana. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having us. And I am on the data team at Indivisible. And As Deb said, both Andy and I have been working on this project. I'm really excited to introduce you guys to it. Really, the goal of this is to give you a basic introduction to the program, how it works, and how you can get involved. So what is Neighbor to Neighbor? A little bit of background on the program. We designed this program because we know that canvassing is incredibly effective, but we often find that people are hesitant either because they're intimidated or it's time consuming. And so we designed this program really to make it quick and easy to talk to your neighbors and get out the vote. And so this is one of our newest midterm programs. We're piloting it exclusively in 4 primaries. And it's, as I said, designed to make turning out your neighbors quick and easy. And all you have to do is remind your progressive neighbors to vote. Oops. So what makes it unique? You're talking to your neighbors. So you may already know them, you may have seen them before, or you may already have a relationship with them. This targets progressives during GOTV, and because we're doing that, we can use a really simple script. It's only 5 to 10 names, so you don't have to, it's not a huge packet, and it's really designed for everyone, whether you're a group leader, whether it's your first time volunteering. We designed this program to be quick and easy. So a little bit about how it works. We'll be sending out a link via text and email on Friday, and you'll click sign up. You'll fill out your information, and then you'll be taken to a map where you will see your dot is yellow, and your progressive neighbors in blue. You'll be able to click on them, and then you'll be taken to a screen where you see just sort of a short script and best practices, and you can mark a response, and we left a little place in case you want to add any feedback. And then the last step, we would love it if you could share it with your friends and family and your network. As we said, it's designed for everyone, whether it's your first time talking to your neighbors or talking to people about voting, or you've done this 100 times. I know you guys have a lot of primary challengers and progressive candidates you're excited about, and we think this is a really great tool to help turn them out and get those candidates across the finish line. Last thing I want to say, one of the last things, feedback for this program is really important. A lot of what you guys tell us will help us shape the midterm program. And this is some of the feedback that we received from the Michigan pilot that just finished. I'll just wait a couple seconds for y'all to read it, but we got a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people were really excited about it being a very doable list, finding progressives in, relatively rural areas, and sort of building connections with neighbors that they didn't know held similar political views. And then how to get started. I think I mentioned this a little bit, but we will be sending it out via email and by text this Friday. I don't know if I said this, but it will be just a website link. You don't have to download an app. And then IMC will also be sharing the link via email. I don't know if we'll, but if you have questions, you can reach out to us. We'll also stay on, but you can email us at neighbortoneighbor@indivisible.org. And that's all. Thanks for having us on. We hope you guys will try it out. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Juliana. Can you just share the Neighbor to Neighbor email via the chat so people have
I can
it?
definitely do that.
That'd be great. And then, yeah, stay on, and if anybody has questions, we'll save them until the end. So great, thank you. Let me, okay. All right, so next we switch over to a very important but obscure office of the Governor's Council. So I turn it over to Karen, where she will begin this portion of the program.
Thank you again, Deb. Governor's Counselor Paul DiPaolo is an attorney and former special education teacher who's taught in alternative settings for at-risk students. He is serving his first term on the Governor's Council, representing the 65 cities and towns of central Massachusetts within District 7. His seat was most recently held by a Republican, and he faces a Republican challenger in this November's election. As a District 7 constituent and supporter of his, I'm proud to introduce Paul DiPaolo.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thanks everyone for putting this together and for your work throughout the state, and good evening. So I was asked to quickly tell you what Governor's Council is, in case you don't know, and specifically address how Governor's Council might intersect with our concerns about Roe being overturned and also around criminal justice reform. So Governor's Council is an 8-member council. Our districts are very big. They're bigger than congressional seats. And we have the authority to approve or reject the governor's judicial nominees and parole board nominees and a few other positions. When there's a 4-4 tie, the governor comes in to preside over the meeting, and the lieutenant governor holds the tie-breaking vote in that case. To jump right to the intersection with Roe, I mean, here's my deal and here's my proposition. And if you don't agree with this proposition, then you might not agree with my concern over the council. But I don't think any child should be forced to give birth, period. In Massachusetts, we can't take anything for granted. Hopefully we've learned that. Under our current law, a child who's seeking an abortion needs the consent of either parents, or if the parents don't consent, a superior court judge. So I'm imagining a child, a pregnant child, and I don't want to think about how they got pregnant because I've worked in the child abuse division of the Suffolk County DA's office, and I've worked with traumatized kids. But a pregnant child comes into Superior Court asking for permission to have bodily autonomy, and the Governor's Council just a few weeks ago approved a Superior Court judge in Massachusetts who's anti-choice. I voted no, but I was very disappointed. We had a nominee who refused to say they would recuse themselves if an issue like this came up. They gave Brett Kavanaugh-like answers at our hearing around questions like this. And they were big time donors to national anti-choice organizations that have been leading the charge to get where we are today. So that's just one area where we need to be vigilant in Massachusetts. I sure hope that doesn't happen again. And then the second thing, criminal justice reform, there's so many areas. I'll jump right to the end of the criminal justice cycle, which is the parole board. So parole board, the parole board gets to make decisions around whether someone can serve the end of their sentence under supervised release in the community rather than in our jails. The parole board's job is to evaluate successful reentry, to evaluate what the person has done while incarcerated, what programs are available in the community when they get out, how are they going to find stability and successful reentry. So to me, it's the bottom line in my voting is for that role to make that assessment about reentry, you need to have a social work background, or you need to have a mental health background, or you need to know about substance abuse recovery, or you need to be in the community on the ground, aware of all the nonprofits and resources that are going to help for that reentry. Instead, we don't get that. Most recently, we got a Republican state rep from a cushy suburb who knows nothing about criminal justice and knows nothing about the experience of the mostly Black and Latino boys who are cycling through our system in a way that we'd like to see end. So I'll stop there. Those are two ways that the Governor's Council can overlap with those two issues. And yeah, I'll cut myself off.
So Paul, we actually allotted time for you to make your campaign speech, unless that was it, all the important things that get done.
I got a couple more things to say.
Okay, go ahead. Go right ahead.
I forgot to say one thing about Roe, and then I want to talk about my own platform briefly. You know, it's not just Roe that the Supreme Court of the United States has on their radar. I really don't think I'm being alarmist. Massachusetts led the way on same-sex marriage. It wasn't our legislature, it was our Supreme Judicial Court. It was not a unanimous decision. In other words, well-intentioned legal minds arrived at a different conclusion. That decision, Goodrich, that happened that allowed for same-sex marriage, that who knows where we'd be as a country, how long it would have taken if Massachusetts hadn't led the way on that. So there's other issues where our Supreme Court matters too. Real briefly about me. So as Karen said in her introduction, I'm an attorney. I'm also a former special education teacher. I built and I taught an alternative public school programming for at-risk kids. So it was largely kids dealing with trauma and abuse, kids dealing with social emotional disabilities, and not having success in traditional high school settings. Unfortunately, that population overlaps quite a bit with court-involved youth. And so I've worked with court-involved youth on the education side and as an attorney. And what I know is if you visit juvenile court on any particular day, you're going to see wildly disproportionately represented kids dealing with trauma and abuse in their life, kids bouncing around our foster system, and disproportionately Black and Latino boys. And once kids are in the system, consequences for what I consider typical teenage behavior escalate and escalate. And eventually we're sending these kids on paths of incarceration as adults. We spend 90 grand a year to keep someone in a cage in Massachusetts at this point. We sure could spend that money a lot better on diversion programs in their youth. When you have unaddressed childhood trauma and you find yourself in a house of corrections, it's a recipe for disaster. We know that in our jails and our prisons, where mental health is really the prime determinant of whether you end up there or not, we're woefully inadequately resourced. The Donald Trump Department of Justice, before that administration ended, issued a report asserting that Massachusetts Department of Corrections was violating constitutional civil rights around access to healthcare. So we have a lot of problems in our criminal system that don't end with the judiciary, they don't end with the parole board, but we need judges who are cognizant of where they're sending people. I guess I just want to say one more thing about the judiciary and how we're shaping it. We know we have documented evidence that we have racial disparities in criminal sentencing, and it's happening in our superior court, and it's happening in specific places. When you're Black or Latino in Massachusetts and you're charged with a crime, if that crime could either go to district court or superior court, meaning it has concurrent jurisdiction, and if you're Black or Latino, you're twice as likely to go to superior court rather than district court. And the reason that's significant is because you're exposed to to much higher sentencing possibilities. And so that's where we see things play out. So every step of the way, I think we need counselors, I think we need judges, and of course, in the other races that I'm sure you're working on, we need people who are gonna address all these little pieces that make up the systemic problems that we so often talk about. I hope I didn't take up too much time. Thank you for hearing me out.
That's great. If anybody has any questions for Paul DiPaolo, please put them in the chat and we'll hold those questions till the end when we do Q&A for everyone. Thank you so much, Paul. That was very helpful, the explanation and then more about you. Next candidate that we have is Mara Dolan. She is Governor's Council candidate for the 3rd District, which is also huge. Mara Dolan is running to be the first-time public defender on the Governor's Council. Since the Supreme Court established the right to court-appointed counsel in 1963, there have been 51 counselors. Not one of them have been a full-time public defender. So Mara will be the first one when she gets elected. Mara is running to help restore balance to our court system, where reformed prosecutors vastly outnumber former public defenders on the bench. She promises to make sure all nominees are pro-choice, anti-racist, understand the science of addiction, and will work to support recovery. Welcome, Mara. You're on mute, Mara.
Oh, Oh, there we go. Thank you so much for having me. I have really been looking forward to meeting with everyone. This is such a vital, vibrant group. And I've got to tell you that the activists on my campaign have been spectacular. I don't know whether you saw there was a story in the Boston Globe last weekend by Yvonne Abraham about this race. I strongly encourage all of you to find it. And she talks about the challenges of the incumbent and what I will bring to the position. But I also want to take a moment to talk about Paul DiPaolo, who I've had the pleasure and honor of speaking with as I was getting ready to run this campaign, just to learn from him a little more about the Governor's Council and how he thinks. And we are very like-minded. And I think that's really important. It's important to have progressive Democrats who are able to build consensus. And that's what I'm very much looking forward to doing with Paul DiPaolo. I've been a public defender for 15 years. I've worked in Lawrence and Worcester and Springfield in our district, our Superior, and in our juvenile courts. And that's why I'm running for Governor's Council, because I know all too well how much a difference a judge makes. And so we've got to make sure that our judges understand the science of addiction and know how to work to support recovery. I just wrote a piece for GBH that was published today on the role that our courts are playing in the opiate crisis. We had record overdoses and deaths last year, despite all the good work a lot of really good people are doing. We need to pay attention to what's happening in our court system, where so many folks with substance use disorder go through. And far too often I see people taken into custody for relapse. It's expensive, it doesn't work, and it can make recovery harder. And it's a very personal thing for me because my sister passed away from an alcohol use disorder. I'm very familiar with the struggles that the families and the loved ones go through, and also the pain of someone in recovery when they relapse. And I think, and I say this in my GBH piece, I know what it would have meant to her if when she relapsed, she had been incarcerated. So I am very concerned about that. I also feel very strongly about the importance of making sure that all our nominees are pro-choice. The person that I am running against, Marilyn Petito Devaney, she's an incumbent, and she just voted to confirm an anti-choice justice. And who said during her hearings that abortion has nothing to do with Superior Court, but it's in Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 112, Section 12R. What Paul DiPaolo just told you, if you're 15 or younger and you can't get the consent of a parent or an adult guardian, there is only one remedy, and that's a Superior Court judge. So for a nominee to say this doesn't apply to Superior Court is particularly alarming to me, because it so clearly does. And even if, according to my opponent, the incumbent, she told her privately that she would recuse herself, that's not good enough. Brett Kavanaugh told Susan Collins that he wouldn't vote to overturn Roe versus Wade, and we all know how that happened, how that turned out. I just want to give you a few numbers about the status quo of our criminal justice system so that you'll understand even more how important it is to bring someone who is progressive into the council so that they can build consensus, like work with Paul and other counselors to help address this. The ratio of former prosecutors to former public defenders who serve as judges in our trial courts is 2 to 1. On the appeals court, it is 5 to 1. And on the Supreme Judicial Court, it is 4 to 1. When I first started to run, my own state senator, Mike Barrett, endorsed me, and he said, our judiciary is loaded with former prosecutors, and Mara will help bring the necessary balance. I did not know then how right he was. I also want to make sure that all nominees are anti-racist. We incarcerate people of color at 7 to 9 times the rate of whites. We have the highest Latino incarceration rate in the country. Now, I don't believe for a minute that these numbers that I'm giving you are consistent with the values of the people of Massachusetts. They're not. We need change on the Governor's Council because it is parole board members and judges who are giving us these terrible numbers. We've had, in the last 20 years, 475 applications for a commutation, yet we've only issued 3. Connecticut issued over 1,000 pardons last year. We issued 0. This year we're up to 3, but that's only when you include a victim of the Salem witch trials. We can do a lot better, which is why I'm running for Governor's Council. It's District 3, it's huge. I put the link to the district in the chat. My website is maradolan.com, but I'll tell you briefly, the district starts in Boston. It's the South End, Fenway, Back Bay, Alston, Brighton, Beacon Hill, goes into Cambridge, goes all the way up to Burlington, and then all the way west out to Marlboro. I am in Concord, so it's all the towns around Concord, Lincoln, Lexington, Sudbury, Acton. I'm asking for your vote and your support. I thank you so much for bringing attention to the Governor's Council race, because one of the issues is that people don't know enough about it. But we are changing that. All of the activists are changing that, because I can tell you that when I tell people what the Governor's Council does, they have the final say on our judges, our parole board members, and on who gets a commutation and pardon. Nobody says, eh. Everybody says, that's incredibly important. And they care, and you care. And I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mara. And if anybody has questions for Mara, please put them in the chat, because after we're done with all the speakers, we'll go into a large Q&A. Next, I am happy to introduce Jeff Morneau. Jeff is a candidate for the 8th Governor's Council District. Attorney Jeff Morneau is a progressive Democrat. He is a partner in a law firm of Connor and Morneau law firm in Springfield, Mass. He has dedicated his practice for the last 20 years to protecting and advancing the rights of employees, labor organizations, and consumers through individual and class action litigation. He is a former president of the Hampden County Bar Association and served on the Joint Bar Committee, the last layer of review of candidates before the governor. He resides in East Longmeadow with his wife and his 2 kids. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you so much for having me, Deb. I really appreciate it, and thank you, Matt, for filling me in that this was going on. And I can tell you right now that after listening to Mara and Paul, I am like so invigorated to get back out on the Governor's Council campaign trail. I cannot even tell you. I'm not going to even come close to boring you by just repeating basically everything that Paul and Mara said, because when I get on the Governor's Council with Mara and with Paul, this entire thing is going to change. The judiciary is going to change here in Massachusetts, and the parole board is going to have a complete overhaul, not just of the people that are sitting on it, but the process and procedures that are going on. I don't even know basically where to begin, because I don't want to just repeat everything that Paul and Mara have said. But just in the way of background, I do all the things that Deb said. I've been doing them for 20 years, representing consumers, employees, and labor unions, and I'm obviously very passionate about that. I served as president of the Bar Association maybe about 8 or 10 years ago, and that's really, even as a practicing lawyer for 20-something years, that's when I first really learned about the Governor's Council, how important it is, what it does. And for the last decade, I have been passionate about this particular elected office. I have helped many judicial candidates through the process. I know the process and procedure from application to the approval by the Governor's Council. I've testified at the Governor's Council. My range of experience for the job, I think, will speak for itself, but it's really, really about the issues. And I can't repeat enough the absolute disaster that happened at the Governor's Council 5 weeks ago. Thank you, Paul, for standing up and for not voting in favor of Claudine Cloutier, along with Terry Kennedy and Eileen Duff. I have no idea how that could happen, especially in light of Roe, knowing that these issues of reproductive rights, women's rights to choose, and all of our individual rights are that they're trying to just take them away. And as I've said, these are rights that my mother and my grandmother fought for. These are rights that my children were born with. And now these rights are trying to be taken away. And we put somehow in Massachusetts, we somehow put somebody who it's not a question. It was obvious that did not support reproductive rights and a woman's right to choose, right? Had made a donation to an organization whose mission is to get women into power, elected office, and on the judiciary that support right to life, who had made a donation to 2 federal candidates who have been known to want to criminalize abortion. So, that's just on that issue. And then you follow up with exactly what Mara said, the statistics about the number of prosecutors versus public defenders. The number, it would be even worse, I would think, Mara, if you went through and did individuals that had a career at large law firms representing large companies and large businesses and insurance companies versus, the pro bono work or work that I do. It's just, the statistics would be even worse. I completely agree with Paul. We need people on the parole board who understand addiction and substance abuse, and agree with Mara on that point. That just has to change. I mean, I don't know, Paul, if you know, but it wasn't that long ago that the United States Attorney's Office had just gone after the parole board, right? They went after the parole board for the way in which they were treating people with substance abuse problems, right? Disorders, diseases. And they weren't treating them. They weren't even treating them as individuals. They were just, cattling them all into one group as though, oh, okay, this is the way it's gonna be. And we know that we need to take, to use your words, Paul, a personalized, individualized, therapeutic approach to these problems, to these issues that are coming up on the parole board. So I'm just, people can call my cell phone. I'm going to put my cell phone in the chat for anybody that wants to call and ask questions, but I don't want to go on and on just repeating what Mara and Paul said. I can't tell you, I'm reinvigorated to go out and knock doors. We got the endorsement. I should announce we got the endorsement of Neighbor to Neighbor today for our campaign. So I'm very excited about that. And, I'm certainly going to let them know about this and our activists and our volunteers about this platform that I learned about tonight. So just thank you all so much for what you do and for the opportunity to let you learn a little bit more about me and my campaign, and to really get reinvigorated by hearing Paul and Mara. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Jeff. All right, so now we open it up for your questions. Have we got any? So Karen and Lori, yeah.
Since Jeff was just on, the last question that came in was to Jeff, asking him how does he differ from the other 3 candidates in District 8, because that appears to be a big question on people's minds with all those candidates running for the same seat.
Sure. On the first, one of the candidates, they say don't mention other candidates' name, but I'm happy to do it. Tara Jacobs. They're all great people, by the way. But Tara Jacobs is she sits on the school committee. She's a non-lawyer. I think there's a distinguishing difference there. While it's not a requirement to be a lawyer to be on the governor's council, I think there certainly is a huge advantage to having a lawyer on the governor's council, somebody who's been involved. I've really been involved in the legal community as a president of the Bar Association, and really brought people together from all around the region. So not just the county where I was president, but worked closely with the other Bar Association leaders in Hampshire, Franklin, and Berkshire. Then on some of the other candidates, one of them is a non-litigator. He's a business lawyer, has had zero appearances in court. And I think that it's extremely helpful, again, to have been involved in those Bar Association activities and really understanding the communities and the different courts within our region. And if you're not appearing before a judge ever, I just don't think that you have the same qualifications as somebody who has had a career of appearing in all of the courts. So it would be district court, superior court, appeals court. I've been in them all representing people. And one of the candidates two of the candidates haven't ever really been in court at all. And then on the issues, I just cannot believe for the life of me that two of the other candidates do not recognize what has been brought out here today, that Superior Court judges decide abortion rights. Both of them, two of the candidates have come out and said exactly what Mara Dolan's opponent said, essentially, which is that, oh, it just doesn't matter in Superior Court. Well, we all know, for all the reasons Paul talked about, it does matter. Any individual, any person under the age of 16 that wants to have abortion and either can't get parental consent or doesn't want to get parental consent has to go before a Superior Court judge. And leave aside, progressive values, democratic values, just values in general. Two of the candidates don't think that that's a problem, and it's a huge problem. I mean, I could go on and on from there with the differences, but it really is the diversity of my legal experience and the diversity of the fact that I've done this job serving on the Joint Bar Committee is essentially doing the job of the Governor's Council without actually being the body that puts the stamp of approval or disapproval.
Thank you, Paul. Just quick, Regina, does that help you? Any follow-up questions since you asked the question?
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm in the district and I have no idea, but this was very, very helpful. I'm so sad I lost Paul DiPaolo. I was working really hard for him last time and then I got districted out. I'm also confused who to vote for senator, but that's not the focus tonight. So we'll work on that too.
Regina, I'll put my cell phone number in the chat, and I'm happy to talk to you individually for a longer period of time with any questions you might have.
Okay, well, I can't ask for more than that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Lori or Karen, any other questions?
The other question I have is for Juliana. So I can't see if everybody's still here or not, but someone earlier on was asking, what data do you use to identify progressive neighbors in your program?
Yeah, so we use a lot of different data sources for that. We pull in data from the voter file, demographic data, data that we have collected over the past years of, get out the vote efforts and election efforts. And then we have a lot of data that we get from various vendors that track this. And one of the things that I think I want to highlight is that because our goal was to make it a really good experience and a really positive experience for first-time volunteers, we sort of weighed any households because you are knocking on a household door. We wanted to pull out any households where we thought, okay, well, maybe there's someone in here who is not progressive, or we tried to keep the very best households in there so that we feel pretty confident that these are going to be a good experience. Does that answer the question?
Very
Great,
good.
thanks. Yeah, Lori?
That's all I saw in the chat. So if anybody has a question, they can raise their hand or, check, just jump in.
Yep. Anybody else? Okay.
Now there's one that just came in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
Saying she's looking at her mail-in ballot now, and it just says counselor in the section for counselor. It doesn't have a name. Is that what you're saying, Cynthia?
It's not governor's counselor, but just counselor?
Yeah, it doesn't say governor's counselor. It just says counselor. So without this informative call, I don't know that I would have known what that was.
Wow, thank you. I haven't.
You're not alone. A lot of people don't know what this seat is.
including the election officials.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so was that a typo? I thought last ballot where we were voting for governor's council, it actually said governor's council. So maybe there was an error this time around.
Paul's raised his hand. He might have the answer.
Go, Paul.
I've asked the Secretary of State to change this because it's so frustrating. And we're also sometimes referred to as the Executive Council, which I believe is how the Constitution refers to us. So, ask your Secretary of State candidates what we can do about just having it say Governor's Council. Thank you.
Okay, good lead in. So I think that that is an excellent idea if we ask our Secretary of State candidate to help us out with this. Hopefully that person will get elected. So I am happy to share that for the first time, Indivisible Mass Coalition has actually made an endorsement for a candidate only because we had requests from the local groups to do so. It's not easy for groups to agree on any one candidate, and I have to thank Indivisible Acton area, Indivisible Martha's Vineyard, and Indivisible Northampton Swing Left Western Mass for their excellent work where they were able to agree that they wanted to endorse a candidate. They did a vote, and the groups voted overwhelmingly to endorse Tanisha Sullivan for Secretary of State. Massachusetts is in a unique spot in the nation in that we have a contested Democratic race for Secretary of State. No other Democratic candidate is being challenged with a primary. Our incumbent Secretary of State has been in his office for 27 years, and the person challenging him is Tanisha Sullivan, a practicing attorney, a civil rights leader, and the president of the NAACP. So thank you for the groups that requested to endorse Tanisha Sullivan. That kicked off the process for Indivisible Massachusetts, a statewide organization, to then reach out and ask its members to vote. This is a grassroots-driven organization. We can only endorse as a statewide organization if the members vote to do so. So thank you to all the members who voted using OPA Vote by email to strongly support. 95% voted in favor of endorsing Tanisha Sullivan. And the reason why I believe everyone did so is because Tanisha is actually running to be the Chief Democracy Officer of the state of Massachusetts, and that is very refreshing to hear. The other reason is not only does she want to remove barriers to voting, but she actually wants to build trust and engage with the community to bring them in and get them comfortable with voting. The communities that have very low voter turnout are the BIPOC communities, the Black communities, Indigenous and communities of color, and low-income communities. So while maybe Brookline, Newton, Wellesley, Concord, out in Western Mass, Amherst, Northampton, they vote at very high rates, and they vote in the presidential at a very high rate of at least 75%. The Boston Black communities don't. The Springfield community doesn't. Turnout rates are somewhere in the 50s to 30s to 25%. And in Boston, for the mayor's race, they had a high turnout, which is really sad because it was only about 30% of the community that voted. So Tanisha is identifying a huge gap that we have, and it's not so much that people can't vote or don't know how to vote or don't have access to vote. It's that they don't trust that their vote will make any difference because nobody's reached out and done anything for them, or they voted in the past and nothing changes for them. So Tanisha is after making these significant changes to our democratic process where she will engage directly with the community to build the trust and not just remove the barriers to voting, but really get people engaged and voting, which will help change, I think, hopefully a lot of things in Massachusetts. I'm happy to share with you links to Tanisha Sullivan's website. She needs donations, she needs volunteers, and if anybody here wants to have a lawn sign for Tanisha, you can find them on the website too. Just sign up, and I'm sure you'll get a lawn sign delivered. And if you know 5 other people, please call them and ask them to vote for the Indivisible Mass Coalition endorsed Secretary of State candidate Tanisha Sullivan, and ask if they'll have a lawn sign too, or put one out somewhere in their community. We want to help spread the word. She is a strong candidate. However, she is running against an incumbent who has tremendous name recognition and plenty of cash to put out ads on television. So she's got an uphill battle. And for her, the primary is the race. Like many other candidates, like Mara and like Jeff. So if you win the primary, I am sure that you will have a very strong chance of winning in November. So primaries are very important. That's why we're here to remind people. Tell your neighbors, tell your family, tell your friends, get out and vote, mail in your ballot if you requested one. Thank you for telling us about the fact that it's only counselor on the ballot. So really vote for that counselor and share that information. Tell your neighbors and friends. And remember, if you know somebody or look for somebody who has yet to vote because they're not registered to vote, the one day you have an opportunity to take somebody to the polls, register them and help them cast a provisional ballot is this Saturday, August 27th. So it's a great opportunity to take a young person, get them engaged in the process, show them the way, register them to vote, and then have them vote. Any other questions? Any comments that people want to share? Any other actions that are happening out there to get the vote out? No, anything happening out in Western Mass, Mary? I know you're doing some voter registration work.
Yeah, so what we're doing is there are several farmers markets that the Regional Environmental Council offers. So we've been doing 2 a week where we table with our voter registration booth, and we're going to up that to 3. We're also doing registered to vote at the Caribbean Festival, the Worcester Caribbean Festival this weekend, and at Start Art on the Street, which is a big festival in Worcester. And I actually did have a question for Juliana.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Juliana, I got a letter from Amy Tarleton at Indivisible National, and she was talking about they're offering these kits for indivisible groups. And I was wondering, so one of them is a canvasser's kit, and the other one, I forget the name. I just got the email just before I signed on. So are you working with her, and should we be getting the canvasser kit or the other kit if we're going to be doing the neighbor to neighbor?
So I don't think the two aren't connected. I don't think one replaces the other in the same way. I don't think our program isn't really designed to replace traditional canvassing, which is obviously really important. I can't really speak too much about it because I don't know what's in it.
Okay, yeah, well, I wrote to her to see, because it's giving us buttons and pins and decals and door hangers. And so that's what made me think that it was in conjunction with neighbor to neighbor.
I wonder, we have Judy Stedman on the line. I wonder if she knows anything about that.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So we're really pleased to be able to offer folks through our Indivisa Essentials program a couple of choices of packages that you can get to help with your work in the coming weeks. One is a recruitment package. The other one is a canvassing package. And you know, there's in the email that you got, there's a list of the items that are included in the package, but this is really just a way for us to give you a little boost for whatever type of work that you're doing. And you know, it may be that you're canvassing and the recruitment package would actually be a better fit for what you're doing, or vice versa. So, you know, please feel free to opt for the package that fits your needs the best. We'd really love you to take advantage of this. So thanks for bringing it up.
Judy, my question to Amy was, in that list of what's in the packets, it doesn't give a description like on what's on the door hanger, what's on the yard signs. And so I would like more information in order to make a decision of which, because it's an either or situation. You can get the canvasser or the recruiter.
Yes, and I don't actually know the answer to that for you, but I can find out, and I will put something on the Mass Coalition Slack when I know more, and if that would be helpful.
Yep, and yeah, that would be. Thank you, Judy, because then I can share it with Mary. That will work. That'll work well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, it is 7:58. Any other questions? So we can end on time. It's now 7:59. I have a quick one for all the candidates. So do you have campaigns that need help getting out the vote? And if so, share the link in the chat and we can send it out so that we can get more people engaged that have been on the call that might want to help the word and spread the good news of your strong candidacies. Great. Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate everybody. Thank you, candidates, for attending and sharing and taking the time to run and be so dedicated. Thanks, everyone, for joining, and have a great night. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.